This talk was given by Roshi Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
Today is Monday, October 13th. This is the third day of our 2025 Jataka Sesshin at the Vermont Zen Center. And this is our first evening teisho. So tonight, our third Jataka will be truly classic. It's the Tigress Jataka. And we've seen the Bodhisattva give up heaven. We've seen the Bodhisattva give great encouragement and risk himself to try and mobilize to save everyone in his caravan. Tonight he'll give everything, give his body. It's quite a stunning Jataka, and we'll talk about it. But to open it, I'd like to read to you something from a book I've referenced several times. Well, it's a quote from a book, and the quote appears in the completely revised and expanded edition of, again, The Hungry Tigress, by myself, Buddhist Myths, Legends, and Jataka Tales. It's the 1999 edition. I don't think the others have this. It's a quote from the writer and aviator Saint-Exupéry from a book called Flight to Arras. The book is a record of a almost suicidal reconnaissance mission he piloted during the Second World War, and a later such mission actually claimed his life. And he was writing about flying towards the target through a barrage of deadly flak. He writes, "Somehow those explosions did not really count. They drummed upon the hull of the plane as upon a drum. They pierced my fuel tanks. They might have drummed upon our bellies. But who cares what happens to this body? Extraordinary how little the body matters. There are things we might learn about our bodies in the course of everyday living if we were not blind to patent evidence. I used to wonder as I was dressing for a sortie what a man's last moments were like, and each time life would give the lie to the ghosts I evoked. Here I was now, naked and running the gauntlet, unable so much as to guard my head or shoulder from the crazy blows raining down upon me. I had always assumed that the ordeal, when it came, would be an ordeal that concerned my flesh. It was unavoidable that in thinking about these things, I should adopt the point of view of my body. Like all men, I had given it a good deal of time. I had bathed it, fed it, quenched its thirst. I had said of it, this is me. And now, of a sudden, this illusion vanished. What was my body to me? Your son is in a burning house. Nobody can hold you back. You may burn up, but do you think of that? You are ready to bequeath the rags of your body to any man who will take them. The flames of the house of the diving plane strip away the flesh, but they strip away the worship of the flesh too. Man ceases to be concerned with himself. He recognizes of a sudden what he forms part of. If he should die, he would not be cutting himself off from his kind, but making himself one with them. He would not be losing himself, but finding himself. This that I affirm is not the wishful thinking of a moralist. It is an everyday fact, but a fact hidden under the veneer of our everyday illusion. Dressing and fretting over the fate that might befall my body, it was impossible for me to see that I was fretting over something absurd. But in the instant when you are giving up your body, you learn, to your amazement, all men always learn it, to their amazement, how little store you set by your body. Here in this plane, I say to my body, I don't care a button what becomes of you. There is no hope of surviving this, and yet I lack for nothing. Man does not die. Man imagines it is death that he fears, but what he fears is the unforeseen, the explosion. What man fears is himself, not death. There is no death when you meet death. When the body sinks into death, the essence of man is revealed. Man is a knot, a web, a mesh into which relationships are tied. Only those relationships matter. The body is an old crock that nobody will miss. I have never known a man to think of himself when dying. Never. So the Tigress. By the way, interesting background to the Tigress. The great 13th Dalai Lama, the present Dalai Lama, of course, is the 14th. He turned 90 this year, and I hope he lives long and healthily. The 13th Dalai Lama, a great administrator, made it a practice in pre-communist Tibet to comment on one Jataka every year at the annual Great Prayer Festival. And as it turns out, he chose to comment on the same Jataka each year, the Tigress. Every year he commented on the Tigress Jataka. It was his Mu Jataka. It was his Why Bodhidharma Came from the West Jataka. It was his Give It All You've Got Jataka. Significantly, Aryashura put the Tigress first in his deeply influential 4th century Common Era Mahayana Sanskrit text of 34 Jatakas, the Jatakamala, or rosary or garland of Jatakas. So, the Tigress. Long ago, the Buddha was a sage, a teacher. One day, during a time of drought, he went walking in a forest with a disciple. The trees were bare, the grass brittle, and the stream beds dusty and dry. Then they heard a series of coughing roars. His student said, "Teacher, that's a tiger. We better go back." But the teacher said, "Wait, yes, those are the roars of a tiger, but I think it's in trouble. I think it's starving. Let's go and see if we can help." Reluctantly, the disciple agreed. They came to the edge of a cliff and looking down, saw a clearly starving tiger, just skin and bones. A tigress, actually, for 2 small cubs who were trying to nurse from her. But when they approached, she roared and purred and drooled and drove them off. The Bodhisattva saw that in her desperation, in her confusion, she was beginning to see her own cubs as prey, as food. "Go now," said the Bodhisattva to his student. "Be quick and see if you can find some food. Unless the tigress eats soon, she may devour her cubs. The karma from that will be terrible. Meanwhile, I'll see what I can do to stop her, but hurry." The disciple ran off. How pitiful, the Bodhisattva thought as he watched the scene below. The tigress had fallen, was now struggling to stand. And when at last she did stand, then growling and drooling, she began tottering toward the tiny cubs. "He won't be back in time," thought the Bodhisattva. "But I can't just stand idly by and let this happen. Mind is vast, totally empty, and cannot be found. This body is a crystallization of my own thoughts and deeds, extending from the endless past. My deepest wish has ever been to liberate beings. To fail to act now would be a cause for regret." Removing his robe, he hung it on a branch of the tree. Then putting his hands together like a man about to dive into a lake, he leapt. Startled by the sound of something crashing to earth, the tigress crouched down in fear, then at last turned to look and saw the bloody body of a man stretched on the rocks at the base of the cliff. Gathering her strength, she lunged forward and began to feed. The disciple returned, apologetic and empty-handed, and saw the teacher's robe on the tree at the cliff's edge. Fearing the worst, he looked over the cliff and saw the tigress feeding. With a cry, he threw himself to the ground beside the tree and wept. Then he rose, dried his eyes, and carrying the teacher's robe as a relic back to the temple, told the others what had happened. Then they all went back with him. They festooned the tree with flowers, and when the tigress and her cubs left, they climbed down the cliff and gathered the Bodhisattva's bones. A jeweled stupa was built to house them. Even the gods, stunned by what they'd witnessed, descended to earth there, where the Bodhisattva's body had been devoured and his blood shed, and covered the spot with heavenly incense, sandalwood powder, and perfumes. Even now, the Bodhisattva's selfless deed is remembered by those same gods, and by humans, too, who know the tale. Tradition says that it will never be forgotten, even as long ages pass and high mountains and great civilizations rise and fall, never to be heard of again. For deeds of compassion live forever. So that's the Jataka. Let's take a look at it from the perspective of practice. There are many kinds of stories in the more than 600 or so Buddhist past life Jataka tales still known to us. There are probably many more in oral tradition. Some exist only as visual presentations. We don't know the stories in text. They range in tone from the heroic to the foolish, to the disturbing, to the truly awe-inspiring, and almost everything in between. In many tales, the Buddha is an animal: a lion, deer, ox, jackal, elephant, dog, peacock, horse, goose, and others. In many, he is human. He's human, showing a full range of both high and low stations in life, from king, sage, and teacher to merchant, doctor, musician, warrior, caravan leader, thief, hunter, even murder victim, and untouchable. There are some in which he is a non-human, non-animal being, a god, a yaksha, a naga, a kanara, or even the indwelling spirit of a tree. In some, he is foolish and needs to learn a lesson. One of my favorites of those is the Bodhisattva is a jackal who eats his way into the body of a dead elephant, where, safe from the elements, he remains munching happily away in a glorious house of meat. But over time, the carcass dries and shrinks, and once the jackal has more than eaten his fill and tries to leave, he finds he can't get out. Desperate, he makes many efforts until he's finally able to squeeze out the dead elephant's butt, losing most of his hair in the process. And so he learns, the Bodhisattva learns the hard way and personally about the dangers of greed, a lesson that changes him. So in some tales he stumbles and fails to meet the challenge. Some he may even need help to try again and get back on track. And in such tales we see him humbly and honestly working at maturing. And yet in others, he perfects a perfection, a paramita, and is truly noble and compassionate and wise, in a word, flawless, a model for the ages of what a human being can truly be. Many Jataka tales are about wisdom, transcendental, profound, selfless, non-dual prajna wisdom, which is compassion. Some are also about worldly wisdom, the kind that knows how to manage a career or turn a dime into a dollar. A number are clearly recyclings of older Indian folklore wrapped in new Buddhist clothing. A few, to be honest, sadly present the projections of the celibate male community's suppressed anxieties about the so-called dangerous wiles of women. However, taken in the ideal, the Jatakas demonstrate the Bodhisattva path and the efforts of the Buddha in his past lives to master the perfections or paramitas of generosity, morality, patient forbearance or endurance, vigor, meditative practice, wisdom, skillful means, resolve, strength or fortitude, and knowledge. The Tigress Jataka remains unique. It is steep, austere, uncompromising, and total. In Japan, at Horyuji Temple, there's a 7th century painted wood portable altar shrine called the Tamamushi Shrine, showing the Bodhisattva hanging his robe on the tree and leaping from the cliff. And then we see the tigress and her cubs waiting to receive this bounty that he's offered of his own body. It's actually like 3 scenes in one. First we see him hanging his robe on the tree, then we see him mid-leap in midair, then we see his body on the ground with the tigers feeding. The Tigress Jataka is also painted on the wall of the Dunhuang caves in China, and they began in the 4th century, and is shown as well in at the 5th or 6th century Bodhnath Stupa at Kathmandu, Nepal. Again, as a narrative, it is like a sheer cliff. Just total, uncompromising compassion. Contemplate it. Muse on it, which is what Eiken Roshi liked to say when wringing you out of Doksan. Kapla Roshi would say, work hard! Eiken Roshi would say, muse on that. Muse on that. A man leaps from a cliff to feed a tigress with his own body. Zen elder, Pulitzer Prize-winning poet, environmentalist, and Kerouac's model for Jaffe Ryder and Dharma Bums, Gary Snyder, makes reference to the Tigress Jataka in an early work titled Myths and Texts. It offers food for thought. It goes like this little quote. We've talked about this before, but I think it's really quite seminal in looking at the Jataka. Buddha fed himself to tigers and donated mountains of eyes through the ears to the blind. A mountain lion once trailed me 4 miles at night and no gun. It was awful. I didn't want to be ate. Maybe we'll change. Buddha fed himself to tigers and donated mountains of eyes through the ears to the blind. A mountain lion once trailed me 4 miles at night and no gun. It was awful. I didn't want to be ate. Maybe we'll change. This brief commentary, while deceptively simple, does something telling. It sets the ideal and the actual in balance side by side. The Buddha's lofty example inspires us, establishes models of selflessness, and awakens archetypes of Buddhist compassion, but Gary won't let himself or us off the hook. If we're honest, we know that by identifying with the Buddha, we don't thereby become like him. Having a dream of a Buddha won't make us a Buddha. When we wake from that dream, we're still going to find a vast distance lies between his compassionate actions and wisdom and our own. People working on precepts can get hung up on this and find it a challenge to let go of the ideal and get down to the humble specifics of how they're actually going to uphold each precept. They're inclined to cling to the ideal, the Boy Scout or Girl Scout version of the precept. Gary's honesty makes the precepts real. At the same time, it reveals the Buddha's lofty character. I mean, feed a tigress with my body? Are you kidding? Come on! Still, having a model of the Buddha's self-sacrifice awakens a desire in us to bridge the gap between actuality and the furthest possibilities of compassionate non-duality. There is that hope, the hope that at some point becomes a necessity. Maybe we'll change. It is humbling and honest, expressing real insight as well as a particular brand of knowledgeable Zen humor. Maybe we'll change. When you think about the Black Hound Jataka, the people in that city didn't go, maybe we'll change. They went, we've got to change. That's the key to it, isn't it? Realizing that we have to change. For this is where our practice gets real, in the gap between the real and the ideal. That's where it gets real. Facing the tigress and her sufferings, we face the sufferings of this Saha world and our own limitations and self-concern in the face of it. Why should innocent animals suffer? Why should children starve? Why should a tigress contemplate a horrible solution to her hunger? What can we do about such things? What can we do in the face of such overwhelming challenges? We look for someone to help. Then we realize it may be up to us. What then to do? Can we call the ASPCA and say, hey, there's a starving tigress down the road? Or what? Such questions awake our deepest aims, arousing the compassionate hope of one day being able to assuage all sorrows. So begins the aspiration of the Bodhisattva of great compassion, him or herself. But where to begin? We start where we are. We start with Zazen. We start with this breath. We start with this count. We start with this koan. We start with Sesshin, and we especially start with Bodhisattva vows, summed up in our great vows for all, or what's also called the 4 vows. All beings without number, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates beyond measure, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. The hope, indeed, is that maybe we'll change. And so we enter a zendo where unspoken vows can, through practice, become realer. We come to Sesshin, where we commit for real to a maturing path of practiced realization. We take Jukai and receive the precepts, vowing to bring them into the challenges of our daily lives. In small ways, bit by bit, bite by bite, we feed ourselves to a starving tiger. Though it may only start as a vague and distant ideal, dana, or generosity, is a life path, one we can begin where we are, as we are. The journey of 1,000 miles always begins with the first step, no matter how humble or how tentative that step may be. It begins, in short, with a vow, and then with a doing, an act as simple as sitting down and practicing just as we are. Wan Wu, Japanese Engo, commenting on case 96, Jiao Chu's 3 turning words in the Blue Cliff record, makes beautiful use of the tale of the Tigress, as well as 2 other Jatakas in the same quote, to encourage deeper practice. He imagines Wei Ke, when rebuffed by Bodhidharma. If you remember, Wei Ke goes up on the mountain and asks Bodhidharma to help him have peace of mind. And Bodhidharma rebuffs him to start with. So Wan Wu imagines Wei Ke being rebuffed, finding a way to dig deeper and encourage himself toward greater effort by recalling Jataka tales. So this act of Buddhist imagination becomes the foundation for his righteous action. It also makes clear that while Zen tradition doesn't hit us over the head with Jatakas, the old teachers were well aware of them and honored them. So here's the quote from Yuan Wu, Engo. When people of ancient times thought the way, they broke their bones and took out the marrow, shed their blood to appease hunger, spread their hair to cover mud, threw themselves off cliffs to feed tigers. Even of old they were like this. What about me? Even of old they were like this. He's talking about the Bodhisattva in Jataka tales. Each of those is a Jataka tale. What about me? Yes. What about me? Thinking like this, the die is cast. Wei Ke, as imagined by Yuan Wu, will not turn away. He will leap from his cliff. He will aim for more totally committed and deeper practice. Once again, a quote from Saint-Exupéry from another book of his, Wind, Sand, and Stars. What saves a person is to take a step, then another step. It is always the same step, but you have to take it. It is always the same step, no matter how many times you've taken it. But you have to take it. Counting each breath clearly, sitting fully, letting everything else go, focusing completely on the koan. The taste of this tea is fully it, as is the painfully stubbed toe of this good morning to a friend, child, coworker, partner. Not ready to leap from cliffs, give eyes, bodies, heads. We sit, take up the practice, follow the breath, let go of this thought, and step out afterward, a little lighter, a little steadier, a little happier, a little less heavily there, a bit more, present here, a little less fearful, a little less angry, and so a bit more capable of spontaneous, unforced kindness and generosity. The practice changes us, which changes the world we live in. There is an implicit challenge to the Tigress Jataka. If a little bunny was at the bottom of the cliff and a tiger about to eat it, we'd easily say, "Jump down, great being, and save that cute little bunny." But that's not the story. Bodhisattva is not trying to save a bunny. He's out to save a tigress and her cubs, a dangerous predator, perhaps the most feared animal in the Indian jungle. And this tiger is in an ugly, murderously freaky state of mind. Can the Bodhisattva's love encompass such a horrifying, dangerous, monstrously awful being? The story is not just about a leap. It's about love. Where do we stand with this? Can we remove our robe of accomplished identity, at least momentarily drop whatever lofty station we may be clinging to in our heads? Let our inner dialogue go. Can we leap from our cliff? We have opportunities every day in conflicts with a partner, a child, a spouse, in torturous phone calls with unhelpful customer service reps. Can we leap from our lofty height and open ourselves to whatever awaits? Can we let go of our habitually safe vantage and really listen? Can we maybe get that other point of view and find a bit of truth in it? Or at least find common ground rather than face off as adversaries? We're challenged on this almost every day. Most of the time. We don't do that great, but we try again and again. At least I find I do. I try again and again. The Bodhisattva's love sets him searching for tiger food, for meat. Where's meat? Wait, I'm meat. I'm food. I might not just be of service, I might be served. I can be the meal. I am in the food chain. It's a humbling perception. To the predator, we are just meat. I've shared this anecdote many times, I think, in the past, but when our daughter Aria lived in Montana, she was walking with a friend in a forest. They had this is kind of perfect, chocolate lab puppy with them, which ran and sniffed and gambled as they talked and walked, passing many people, going deeper into those woods. And then when they were out beyond where others were hiking, they suddenly noticed how quiet it was. And then they saw the mountain lion that was stalking them. Rather foolishly, they picked up the puppy and put it between them to keep it safe. And then for 10 terrifying minutes, they were meat, just meat. Eventually, other people, hikers and runners, came along and made one big body with many heads and arms. And the lion vanished. But forget degrees. Forget your practice. Forget your rewards. Forget your accomplishments. Forget your hopes, your wishes, your dreams, your aspirations. Meat. I was trailed 4 miles at night and no gun. It was awful. And yet, isn't this recognition, I am meat, I am food, a recognition of the deepest reality? Jesus said, "This is my body. Come and eat," forming the foundation of the Catholic Mass. In the Hindu Vedas, an ancient chant reveals the essence of a profound liberation a recognition that my own self is what I have to offer. It goes simply, I am food, I am food, I am food. I am an offering. I am the sacrifice given willingly to all. After death, I will be consumed by bugs and worms, ants and microbes, and re-enter the food chain. I am food also carries the sense that I am eternal, endless, the universe itself, my living body, as it equally means I am nothing at all in myself, only something to bring nourishment to others. Maybe one day we no longer hold back and leap from the top of our lofty, isolated, hard-won vantage and get totally eaten, swallowed, chewed up, gone, just like that. It could happen in the Zendo, taking a walk, eating a meal, talking to a friend, making a phone call, or anywhere really. Gone, gone, entirely gone. It's a liberating, confirming moment, a peak experience, a milestone, but we don't live on peaks, which are vast, empty, bare. There's no one and nothing there at all. In time, we get our feet back on the ground, where the endless work we were born for can at last begin. The Tigress Jataka dramatizes the perfection of noble giving, of dana, the essential paramita of limitless generosity. The giving up of self that Dogen says releases birds to the air and flowers to the spring. It is in giving away our eyes that we begin to see. In giving up our bodies, we begin to feel. The Tigress Jataka dramatizes and perfects this most dramatically in one fell swoop, that even for the Bodhisattva, countless moments of small givings, of selfless moments, of committed zazen, of Doksan, Sesshin, and life situations that forced them to change and grow, led up to it. And even more will follow. Once again, we now by choice have the rare and precious opportunity with this human body to do this work. A night of Sesshin, and a day, and another night, and a morning remain for us, in which we too can at last finally give everything, even ourselves, which is all we've really got, to the practice for the benefit of all. And so once again, onward, with all we've got, our whole body fully into the practice.